This is Kid.
And this is Drag.
And today we're going to talk about
all the stuff you think about.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the technology around gaming and what excites us. We've got a very special guest, Xeronine, who is a very good friend that I met not long ago in the game of games, if you will. And we've also got Kid Rolla on the show.
Ooh.
All right. So we'll go ahead and get to it and talk about the most exciting gaming technology that's coming out in the next year or has just released for those people that might just be starting up. But let's get a little introduction from Xeronine just to talk about what got you into gaming. So Zero, what really got you into this world of gaming?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely.
I am quite excited. I've been watching your Discord channel talking about it, and here I am. So, yeah, gaming. I would love to say that I'm a lifelong gamer. I guess that's mostly true. I started out playing video games when I was a young child. I was sent to the hospital for a hernia at the age of I don't know, 7 or 8. I don't remember the exact age. And
Man.
while I was there, I was in the recovery room after going through surgery, and my uncle came out and he said, "Matt, if there's anything in the world that you'd want, what was it?" Which is a really dangerous question to ask a 7-year-old. And I said, "Mike, I'd really like a Nintendo." And he goes, "Okay." So came home from the hospital and walked into the living room, and sure enough, there was the classic NES sitting there hooked up to our living room television, and it had Duck Hunt in the cartridge, and pulled out that light gun, and I guess from there is history. So yeah, I've been avid gamer my entire life. It's funny. My mom, she used to tell me that gaming will never really get you anywhere. You're wasting your time, and that may be true. I don't have a job that has anything to do with gaming or the gaming industry even, but I've met a lot of great people along the way, and I couldn't imagine my life without gaming and all the people that I've met. So so that's my history of gaming in a very quick 5-minute intro. But yeah,
right.
Yep.
So where I met Zero was circled around gaming, surprisingly enough, and it was around a charity function that was going on. And I'll give a shameless plug for this, that I'm very excited to be a part of this. Lucked into Zero just completely at random, said, "Hey, I want to get involved in this." Started looking around, looked at a couple of events that were going on, and fell onto this combobulation Zero has put together just out of nowhere through his extreme passion for gaming. So Zero, why not a little plug about the Extra Life efforts that you've got going on here in St. Louis?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, thanks for talking about that. Basically, about going back 5 years, I started doing the Extra Life 24-hour gaming marathon from home, which, if for those unaware, Extra Life is a Children's Miracle Network function. And the idea is that you as a gamer try to raise money throughout the year, and you pick a day, or it could be several days. Most people choose a day, and then they play video games all day long, and they stream it. Their friends watch it. Their family watches it. I try to raise as much money for a children's hospital, a Children's Miracle Network hospital that you choose. So I used to work for Washington University, and when I was there, a function of Washington University is St. Louis Children's Hospital. So I loved the idea of giving back to the hospital that I work for and helping out the sick and injured kids in the St. Louis area who may not be able to afford some of the treatments. So we started doing this about 5 years ago. It was, again, just playing from home. We'd set up that day, and for 24 hours, I'd play Counter-Strike or Portal or World of Warcraft or what have you. And then one year, some friends of mine said, what would be great? We used to have LAN parties back in the day. Everyone knows, well, hopefully everyone knows what LAN parties were.
Before the internets were a thing.
I'll tell you, my mother knows what LAN parties are because most of them were at her house. So
Man.
That's right.
we would bring all of our computers out, set them up, hook up a bunch of switches, buy a lot of Doritos and Mountain Dew, and we'd just sit there and play games for 2-3 days, however long basically you could stay awake and how long our parents would allow us to game inside their homes. So the idea was, let's bring that back. Let's have one now that we're adults, and maybe some of us have some more money that we could be charitable with. let's have a public event where we all get together. We have a good old fashioned LAN party, but this time have the benefit be not only our enjoyment of playing games, any chance I can get to play 20 games for 24 hours, I'll certainly take up. But also to be able to give back to the Children's Miracle Network. So it's been great. And last year was our second year. The first year we had about, I think the maximum PC gamers we had was 12, and we probably had about 50 or 60 board gamers that came through. That was in 2017. So in 2018, which was our last event, we had about 48 PC gamers, and we had probably about the same amount of board gamers, I believe. So close to 100 people came through the day and contributed. And between the St. Louis area board gamers and DEF CON 1 Gaming, our community, we raised about $9,500 for the charity, which I'm super stoked about. And I can't wait to do it again next year. So right now we're kind of in this year, this November, we're in the process of, yes, it is rapidly approaching. So we're in the process of getting together all of the details for that. And hopefully we'll have some announcements soon. But yeah, that's the charity.
Yep. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, it is. And it's been such a great community event just to meet new people that are that interested and that passionate. We got kind of all walks of life that came through this last go around with that many people. We had some very young folks, some very senior folks like myself going around, but it was great. It was a good event. There was some group play going on, some, where everybody's playing the same game together. Got a really great turnout. I would say really great setup. It went off without a hitch other than the first 10 seconds of the deal. But other than that, it was a great experience.
Which we won't talk about.
That time we call the dark times, the dark ages. But going into, so that's kind of a little introduction to Xeronine, how I met Zero in the first place. And now we're going to move over to the topic of the technology. So if there's one thing, are the top couple of things, Zero, that I know I've seen your computer setups, I know your builds, I know the excitement that you put into that and networking and all the technology behind it. So it's a great guest to have on to talk about this. So Zero, what if you look backwards for the last year, what excited you the most and was like the biggest win that you saw come out in technology around gaming and being able to stream or do any of those things?
Yeah, so sometimes I like to think that I'm late to adopt some technology because I want to see how it's utilized before I invest in it.
Sure.
And I know that this is something that, I saw at the first LAN you had, which was the Stream Deck, the Elgato Stream Deck. And I was very late to the party to buy one. And I'm regretful of that because I have spent so much time customizing this thing. See, when I first saw this device, I thought, okay, this is for people to play fart sounds and to change their scenes and their streams. And like, okay, I can just set up hotkeys on my keyboard and do that. Right. And I did. And, I mean, I didn't have the fart sounds, but sound effects, that kind of stuff. Okay, sure, great. But I don't know that I could go to a computing life without this because gaming, I mean, obviously it's great for gaming and streaming. That's what it's designed for. It's literally called Stream Deck. The integrations it has into all the game streaming software is fantastic. We've used it with the Streamlabs OBS. It obviously works with standard OBS, but I've also now got tabs, and I wish I could almost show you this, where I've got all of my home automation functions built into the buttons on the Stream Deck. So even if I'm sitting here working at home and I want to turn on the lights because it's getting dark, I can just push a button and the lights turn on in the house. Or if I'm on a conference call and the Roomba starts running across the floor and I want to quickly stop it, I have a button that uses this then that to tell the Roomba to stop moving. And
that's cool.
So I would agree. What did you think about if you would have came just a couple months later to the party? You could have got the big one. I just saw that advertised and I am so frustrated about that. Yeah. So, but hey, listen, that is always the case with technology. Every time I've ever bought something, a month to 6 months later, it's been replaced by something better. And the reality is, hey, listen, if you want the new one, go get it. If you can sell off your old one. Or, I mean, how many do you have? You have two, right? I have
you have
two
of the Stream Decks?
I do.
Yeah. So I've been playing a lot of Star Citizen, and the community for Star Citizen, which if you don't know Star Citizen, look it up. It's great. It's one of the world's largest crowdfunded video games. It's been in beta for many years, and it can be a topic of both excitement and extreme frustration for me. But in general, it's great fun. But the community is the real thing around Star Citizen, and there have been people that have made complete profiles for the Stream Deck, to where you load up the profile and you can control your ship, you can do the ejections, you can do, you can turn on your armor, you can manage everything directly from the Stream Deck, and they've got all the graphics and everything for all the buttons. It's great, and a lot of people actually will have two of them. Because there's just so many options in that game.
Right.
They'll have two of them dueling against each other, and then you can use, both hands to control your ship and whatnot. It's great. Yep. Again, the possibilities are endless for this thing. And I know it's been out for a while, but I don't think that maybe everyone understands the full potential of this device, because I certainly didn't. When I was seeing people use them, I was like, yeah, okay, again, fart sounds great, cool. But now that I've been using it, and the inner hacker inside me has come out and started to write my own custom scripts to do things around the house, I think that it's probably one of my favorite tech components that I've purchased this year. And yes, they did come out with the XL version. But as I look at my Stream Deck right now, I've got things broken down into so many folders that on most pages there are empty slots. So it's not the end of the world to me.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I mean, it is so versatile, and I know I was an early adopter and picked one up almost right away, and it really did not have a ton of functions. Putting in hotkeys and all that stuff, they just didn't have the code written, and I think if you looked at it at that time, you probably are feeling much like what you're talking about. Hey, I don't know that I'm really going to use that. I don't stream. I don't do this. I'm at the point that I don't care if I play another video game. I want one of these just for workflow management, period. It is amazing.
Yep, absolutely.
I would have to wholeheartedly agree. If you go back to think about what smartphones have done in our world today, they're done that way because they are soft, and they really are programmable, and it's not restricted to one app or one thing that you can do. You've got a world of apps. You got a world. If you don't really like what's out there, I'm sure wait a week and it'll be out there. Very, very soft. Don't have to have buttons to make it work. Stream Deck kind of brings that to the world of computing, 100%, that it gives you quick keys for just about everything. So I would highly recommend as well.
Yep. And I know that software can be somewhat of a frustration. I know that they've had some updates in the past that may have caused issues. Wink, wink. But from a hardware perspective, this thing is built like a tank, and OLED has come a long way, because I remember back in the early 2000s, there was this OLED keyboard that was supposed to come out, and they teased it for a very long time. And it was, you can have all your Photoshop buttons, and you push a mode and it goes into Photoshop mode, and all your keys remap. And I was like, wow, that is the future. That looks awesome. But the thing never came out. And they eventually released something kind of like the Stream Deck. It was, I think it had 3 buttons, but they were OLED. You can customize them to whatever you wanted. And I almost bought that, but it was silly expensive. I mean, for 3 buttons, I think it was like $200.
Right.
Not gonna pay for that. But the build quality on this, because I have slammed these buttons and they have absolutely stood up to my abuse, and they're super bright. In a fully lit day with the windows open, I can see everything on the screens perfectly clear. I mean, this is not a paid advertisement for Elgato, but I'm telling you, I really like this device, and
they're just that good.
They are. So that's the first piece of kit that I've purchased that I think is quite impressive. And then the second thing, I haven't actually purchased it yet. I'm a bit on the fence, but VR in the last couple of years has come a long way with the introduction of the Oculus Rift, and then the HTC Vive and the PlayStation, whatever it is. There's been a lot of interest in virtual reality. And I was on that bandwagon from the beginning. I had pre-ordered the Oculus Rift on Kickstarter. I got the first Oculus development kit unit. When it released to the public, they shipped me the fully completed version, which I actually wasn't expecting. It just showed up one day. Very cool. I loved the Oculus Rift for what it was. I thought, in my opinion, it was one of the better of the virtual reality options. The games worked really well. The screen was great. My problem with it was always being tethered and having to stay focused and kind of understand where I was standing so that I didn't leave the IR camera array, right?
Right.
Well, Oculus announced and has since released the Oculus Quest, which has a camera built in. It's got a great screen. I think it's actually a higher resolution than the original Oculus Rift. Don't quote me on that. That's just something that I had heard from a friend. It's got some really neat features. Aside from the fact that it's wireless, it has the camera built in, which does geofencing. So if you're walking through a big room and you're coming up to a pole, it puts up the geofence. And if you put your head through the geofence, it actually turns on the camera so that you inside the mask can see what's on the other side, what you're about to hit, which is pretty neat. So there's some really neat features, and the only thing that it's a little limited by, and I'll talk about some potential workarounds in a second, is obviously the processing power, right? So if you're on a train going to work and you're wanting to play a game, the games will look okay. I would say they'll probably look like a cell phone game. It's not going to be insanely good. It's not going to be like running it from a tethered situation like the original Oculus Rift.
Right.
But it is still pretty impressive for what it is. I think it gets pretty decent battery life. And one thing that I've heard, a friend who has purchased one and has been using it for the last couple of weeks had mentioned that there's some software that you can use that you can run on your PC, or if you're connected to your wireless network, it can stream your PC, your gaming PC can do all the rendering and then stream it to the Oculus Quest so that you can see everything in full fidelity like you were gaming on the Oculus Rift connected and tethered to your PC. Now, obviously, that's going to rely on probably 802.11 AC wireless for the performance, and you're still going to have a pretty beefy machine to run all of that. But much like Steam Link, and there's some others that have done similar things to where, you let's say you're wanting to sit on your couch and you want to play I don't know, a game that's not available on a MacBook Pro on a Mac, but you have your gaming PC in your office and you can fire up Steam Link and you can connect on your Mac and you can play that PC game on your Mac, and your PC is doing all the rendering. So you get 100 frames per second on your MacBook Pro, which is pretty impressive.
Right.
And it doesn't really even tax the battery much because it's not doing anything. It's just showing you refreshing frames that are coming from your PC. So I think it's using more or less the same technology. So that's pretty cool. I think the future is going to be wireless. I would get wrapped up in the tether all the time. There was this game called like Echo Link or Echo something where it was almost like if you've seen the movie Ender Game or if you've read the books, there was kind of a combat game that they would play where they'd throw these discs and they had to get them through goals and they'd bounce around objects and things. And it was very similar to that. And I put my hand up into the ceiling fan that was spinning at full speed once because I was trying to catch a disc and I put my hand straight into the fan. Or I need to replace the blinds next to my desk because I put my hand through the blinds, that kind of stuff. So being able to be in a larger environment, not tethered to your computer and kind of hostage to the area that surrounds your gaming rig, I think that's the future of VR, and I can't wait for that to happen. I think Oculus is pushing the envelope. I know that Steam has just announced a new virtual reality headset, which looks pretty good. But again, they're tethered, so it's I'm just waiting for that day where I can basically run my gaming rig on my head and not look like a buffoon.
I can tell you 100% I am completely paranoid about that tethering just because I'm going to jerk a jack out of my computer. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I'm hundreds of dollars into the repair.
On my list of things is not ripping out the HDMI port on my RTX 2080 Ti. So yes, I totally agree.
Let's not blow up a $1,400 graphics card over a ball that's just out of my reach.
Exactly. And this is actually the second virtual reality headset that Oculus has come out that's completely wireless. They had I think it was the Oculus Go, which was really a cell phone. I mean, I think for all intents and purposes, it was a cell phone that was driving everything inside it. And I wanted one of those just to watch Netflix on a plane. Like I've been traveling more for work, and the idea of just zoning out everyone around me and watching a movie on a 110-inch screen inside my VR headset, sign me up.
Well, I will say I did get that on some Samsung promotion. They were giving that out along with the purchase of a Samsung product at the time. And I really enjoyed Minecraft. I'll have to be honest. There were two things I liked about it. One, that the photos that they had. So they had like this stock photo collection from all over the world where you got this 360 view of standing on the Great Wall or standing in the streets of Italy. Very surreal. That was pretty cool. The second was Minecraft. Just flat out, they optimized that game really well for that environment, although it felt like my Samsung was literally going to catch on fire because it was so hot powering through that thing. But I had a lot of fun playing Minecraft, and I'm not just a huge Minecraft player.
And I think there's been a lot of innovation in that space too, because I mean, when VR first kind of came to light, and I mean, obviously VR has been around for a while. Don't let me fool anyone to think VR is new. It's been around for a while. Virtual Boy, yeah, exactly. I mean, even going to like Xeronine in the mall, and you'd wear that giant, like you'd get into this giant circular rig, and you'd put on this massive helmet, and you'd be able to spin around and shoot at things, and cool, awesome. But the accessibility of it has become something that's quite interesting. And Google did something I thought that was really cool. When VR was kind of starting to get out there, they were promoting it so hard that you could do the Google Cardboard, and they would even send it to you. All you'd pay for is shipping, a few dollars, and you'd get this cardboard box that you'd fold up, and it had these little ocular prisms that you'd put in there, and there was a magnet to control the device. You'd slide your cell phone in. You'd install their app, and then you could do just that. You could get into VR at maybe $3.50.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
It was really cool. And my wife and I were standing in the living room, and I put it on, and I'm like, oh man, look at this. This is amazing. And that was just staring at my phone screen. And we were doing something very similar. It was like, we're going to, like National Geographic climbs Mount Everest, and they want to take you along, and you're climbing up Mount Everest in your living room. And I was just blown away. Because my previous experience of that was just that Xeronine, you put the big thing on your head and you're spinning around, and it's it's a big machine that's high voltage and massive, but
it's not something you're going to throw up in your basement, is what you're saying.
Well, hey, listen, don't.
I have seen your cockpit before.
You've seen my flight simulator.
That's
so
right.
yeah, I mean, hey, maybe someday. But yeah, but no, I think that it's come a long way, and I'm really excited about it. And I think that they're making the right moves forward. I know that obviously Oculus is owned by Facebook. I have some torn feelings about that, but they've been still developing new hardware, pushing it out. They have a Facebook app. I'm sure you can scroll through your Facebook feed and you can watch videos and all that. Cool, great. Let them have that. But they haven't, they've still been pumping money into it instead of just saying, okay, VR isn't working.
Right.
We're going to move on and it's dead. They've not. They've kept developing it. And I think that really kind of says something. For as much shit as everyone gives Facebook, and a lot of times it's justified, but I think in this case they're actually keeping it going, and they're not wanting to kill it off. They see a goal and they're trying to get there, and I can appreciate that. So
yeah, and I hope companies in the tech world today have realized how important R&D dollars are going in. I mean, you look at all the success measures; they're all the way up to half of their entire budget is into R&D. Is about the only thing that you can keep up with the rapid advancing technology. So that's good to see them staying on. I mean, that's where they came from, is getting some really good R&D, getting up with a great idea. Please don't forget that, Facebook.
Right.
So moving on to the biggest bust of the last year. What was that thing that you got really excited about? Don't care what it is, but you picked it up, you bought it, you tried it out, and you're like, oh man, I had so many hopes, and it just fell flat. Other than VR, which we know that's a progressing thing.
Oh, I'm gonna have to think about that one for a second.
Yeah, because I think there's quite a few. I think you can pretty much say Star Citizen is the biggest win and the biggest bust for every year.
Yeah. So, yeah, Star Citizen. That's a topic that can get me going here a bit. I kind of talked about it earlier, but Star Citizen, the whole idea is it's crowdfunded. So what they did originally was they had ship packages that you could buy a ship, and when the game released, you'd have that ship, you could fly it around. A lot of the promotional ships came with insurance, so that if your ship was blown up, you can get a new one, you'd be reimbursed. And they still do that when they have new ships that are designed or theorized. They create some concept art, they put it up for sale, and people go nuts buying it. And I can get behind it. I obviously have. I've got probably $500 or $600 in virtual ships that that I've paid for this game that may or may not ever actually release. I mean, at this point, it's going to release. Just to whether it's to the grand scale that they had originally planned or not would be the real question. But again, it's a game that I've followed since it was announced at E3, I think in 2013, and I've played it with a friend every time they come out with a new big update or a new big patch where they're introducing new features or bug fixes. We'll jump in and play until we get frustrated, and because some glitch happened or what have you, and then we disconnect and say, okay, that's good. We'll come back
Citizen.
and
welcome to the true game of Star Citizen.
There was a moment that both my friend and Remnant shared when we were playing this last time, and they had introduced this new area, and the scale of this game is just insane. You fly from moons to planets through asteroid belts, the whole thing. Hyperdrive. I mean, when you're flying from one section to another, it can take up to 20 minutes for you to travel just because it's so far away and it's quantum travel and whatnot. So anyway, we get to this town that had been announced in the E3 announcement, and they showed some concept art, and it's like, wow, the scale of this will be amazing. And we fly our ship in, and and John's walking around the inside of the ship while I'm coming down for a landing, and he's kind of scouting out like, okay, I think we need to land over there. And I call the landing services. They tell me which landing pad to go down. We land, we get out, we walk through customs. But the part that blew my mind the most is we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we get to this other side of the town that we've read so much about and have seen in some of the demos? And we found this bus station, and you get in the bus, and the bus door opens, and it hovers away, and you get this view of the city that was just absolutely gorgeous. And I wasn't sitting there with my friend John, but I just had to pause, and I was thinking, my goodness, this is why I've given this game so much money, because the scale of this and the attention to detail is so extreme that this is a truly magical gaming experience. And I'm almost getting goosebumps explaining it now just because of how immersive it felt. I mean, they had the sounds and the steam and the other people walking around. It was just gorgeous. If you look it up, it's just look for demos of Star Citizen Alpha 3, whatever, 3.5 or whatever they're on now, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. It's just beautiful. Now, the pitfall of this game is that there are a lot of bugs, and there are a lot of people that are working to fix those bugs. But they'll also announce these new features, and every time they come out with this new thing, like, hey, we now have a camera that tracks your eyeballs, and in game, when you're talking to someone, when you're talking in voice chat, you'll see their mouth move and their eyes follow you and all that. And it's like, oh, that's great. Can you fix these bugs, please?
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are some problems that it has, and so anyway, basically, John and I, we play it, and we get frustrated. Then we said, all right, we'll come back in another 6 months. We'll give it another shot on the next big release, and that's how it's been. Yeah, that's how it's been every time.
That is exactly my experience with it. When I sat down, I don't know how many insurance claims I filed within the first day, just not understanding the controls. But I found the ship, drove it off, jumped out of it. I don't know how many times, but it is exceedingly complex and detailed. I mean, everything on your screen is interactive. There's a lot of controls. It really does give a very good space sim feel that is unequaled out there with any game. So
my hype for this game has gone to the extent of quite literally building a cockpit that I can sit in when I'm playing this game. And I bought the Thrustmaster HOTAS Warthog controls. I've fabricated, basically the cockpit is based on a A10 Warthog. So it's the A10C variant. For those who know about the A10 Warthog.
Right.
It's CNC cut, glued and nailed together, painted, looks good. But yeah, my goal was to use this as my cockpit so that I'm playing, I can sit there and have really the most authentic experience possible. But money,
I do.
money and time.
That's right.
It's a project that's been basically shelved, and it sits up in a spare bedroom in my house, collecting dust. But maybe one day I will get it out.
Probably about the time that Star Citizen gets wrapped up and completed, you'll be energized to go take care of that project. Would be my guess.
Maybe.
So in the next year, just wrapping up for our last little point, next year, what are you looking forward to? I know there's a lot of buzz going on with processors, new gaming technologies as far as the different engines and the advancements that are coming across that. What stands out to you as the most anticipated thing coming up? And I know we talked about some that are released and improving, but of the new, what have you had your eye on?
Yeah, so Intel just announced that they have a new 8-core processor that goes up to 5 gig. It's a i9, I think it's the 9900K, which is an LGA 1155 95 watt processor. And Intel for a long time had never been able to break the 5 gig barrier unless you overclock. And my machine, I've got an i9 with 12 cores, and I've got every core boosted to 4.5 gigs. If I push it much past that, I get very unstable in certain applications. Photoshop will crash my machine immediately if I launch it clocked at 4.5. But gaming, so the idea of having a 5 gig base processor non-overclocked is quite impressive, and it's relatively inexpensive. I think my i9 that I bought was $1,200. This 9900K is like just under $500, which is great. It's a great price point to get into. 8 cores, all of them at 5 gig. Beautiful. I think that's awesome. And if I were to rethink my processor selection, I may have gone with something like this if it were available when I was building my last machine. But I think that there's some great technology there that's coming out. I mean, obviously Intel has been a big name for a long time. They've come out in the last 3 years. They came out with the i9s, which have, you can get up to a 24 core or 28 core. I mean, you can get a ridiculous processor, and that's great for certain people. I would normally, if you're a gamer, I would not tell you to go full i9. More cores does not mean more performance for gaming. You want maybe fewer cores at a higher base clock speed. So that's where this processor comes in. It is an i9, 8 cores, 16 threads. I think the base is 3.6 gig, and it turbos up to 5. So it's not always at 5. It's at 5 when it needs it. And from my experience, when it says turbos at 5, that really basically means that it runs at that speed for a few seconds and then drops back down because, they're not spec'd fully to run at 5 gigs constant. So
unless you're playing Star Citizen, then it needs it. Then 20 more.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes.
It could be. Could be.
So, I would have to, I agree. Intel has kind of been the reigning king for a while. I do have to give severe props going back to AMD. I think they kind of changed the processor game up, getting something that's at least competitive out there. I think it's pushed Intel to continue to develop and innovate where I feel like they were sitting in such a good place for so long without being competitive that it was very healthy. So I myself run Ryzen technology from AMD, and I'm very satisfied with the performance overall. I still use NVIDIA graphics cards.
I applaud AMD for, the Phoenix Rising moment, if you will, when they announced the Threadripper, and I was like, oh wow, that's quite impressive. And then I saw the price. I was like, wow, they are really going after Intel, especially on the gamer side. I personally have not owned a Threadripper. I think the last AMD chip I owned was an AMD FX64, which was, that was $1,000 processor when I bought it. But the thing would constantly overheat. And I even had a full liquid cooling loop, not overclocked. It would burn up. And I was between blaming the AMD chip or the Asus board, but the Asus system board. But anyway, my past experience with AMD was not great. That being said, I do applaud them for coming out with a low-cost monster of a processor. I think the Ryzen chip is quite impressive. I think they need to now do the same thing for their graphics cards.
Yeah, that needs a lot of help. Lots of help.
I always try to say, if you're going to buy an AMD chip and an AMD chipset, go with an AMD graphics card because they're inherently designed to work together.
Correct.
And you're going to get more boost out of it than if you were to put an NVIDIA card. I mean, that being said, NVIDIA cards, I think still, in my opinion, are the premier cards right now and have been for the last few years.
Sure.
I've never owned an AMD graphics card. I did own Radeon graphics cards before they were owned by AMD, because back in the day, the Radeon 9500 or 9800, they were boss. Like, that was, you wanted a high-end graphics card, you'd go spend your $300 on a Radeon 9800 Pro. And funny story, when I started working at Best Buy, The reason why I started working at Best Buy was because I had heard about their employee discount that was quite generous.
Right.
And I needed a new graphics card. So quite literally my first purchase with my first paycheck, my entire first paycheck, was a Radeon 9800 Pro, which immediately overheated, and I did the oven trick to bring it back to life. And
wow.
But yeah, no. So I have a lot of respect for the history of Radeon cards, and I hope AMD can kind of resurrect what was once the premier card and maybe have something that, you know, the combo of the Ryzen Threadrippers with a AMD graphics card, maybe that will be in 5 years what I'm looking at buying instead of giving Intel and NVIDIA all my money.
Yep. I agree. I'm excited. I'm looking at a refresh. They've got the Ryzen 9 series with the X570 stuff coming out that's supposed to be really the next gen in a legitimate manner, that they're talking 15 to 18% over their prior core count or IPC or whatnot. That looks interesting with the base clock at 3.8, 4.6 across 12 cores and 24 threads. So that's pretty exciting, coming in at the value $500 for that level of processor. And then more the gaming friendly 3800X, which is the series I have now. Still an 8-core 16 count or 16 thread count, but coming in about $400. I think it just the value that's out there. I think when you're looking, AMD has always been that value play, right? It didn't matter if you go back to the FX series or after, immediately after or the late half of the FX series. They've always been the value play where you could get some performance out of them. They never kept up with Intel with the instructions per clock or the single core performance. But now, hey, we're playing the same sport at least, and they're using their budget, and you're actually getting value out of it. So I highly endorse that, and more so endorse getting the competition in the space. I think
that's the most important thing. And with technology in general, if there's no competition, then there's no innovation, in my opinion. You need fierce competition in order for them to push new boundaries and develop new things. I mean, how long has Intel been working on lower nanometer chips? Forever. And I believe that the NVIDIA chips, I think those are at 7 nanometer, and Intel's still struggling to do 10 nanometers. So,
and that was another, the new Ryzen series this year, 3000 series is on 7 nanometer process. So kind of interesting to see it actually working. I think it will again push push Intel into that space pretty quickly if their competitors are getting it done.
Yeah, so one of the big differences between the AMD graphics cards and NVIDIA and Intel, just as a chip manufacturer, not speaking to the specific technology, but there are chip foundries, and I know that AMD for their graphics cards, they actually go to foundries to develop these new things. They're not owned by AMD. I'm sure AMD makes their Ryzen chips, but Intel, for example, has to put all of the R&D into building these factories to build these chips, whereas a lot of the other manufacturers that they compete with don't, and they don't have to front all of that learning expense of how to get to a smaller nanometer chips. So that's one thing that's kind of interesting to think about there. But
I think it's definitely a good future in the near future. Building a computer right now is very hard, because there are options just popping up literally every couple months that redefined how you thought about gaming, how you thought about the processing. Just a couple of years ago, I mean, the improvements over the past 5 years are just astronomical.
Right.
And now they're accelerating every year. And I think it's a great thing. Just a hard time to stop and say, okay, I'm ready to build something.
So do either of you have an RTX card?
I did not move that way. I'm staying with my 1080 Ti until.
And honestly, I'm going to tell you that's probably perfectly fine, because as much hype as NVIDIA put around these RTX, the ray tracing technology, I've not really, I played Battlefield 5, and I've put all the RTX mode on. I've done DirectX 12 in order to support it. And, it's such a fast-paced game that you can't, the opportunity to really sit back and enjoy and like, wow, look at that reflection in that mud puddle, or look at the flames bouncing off that wet wall. I don't really get that. I don't see it. It's something that I feel I've probably paid a lot for the hype. I bought into their hype, as I usually do, unfortunately. And I've just not seen too many games that have come out to support it. And I think now they're starting to come out. Like I saw a Quake mod where you can play, I think, Quake 3, and Quake now has RTX. Like
Wow.
Right.
you know, okay, great, but no one cares.
Yeah. It's definitely
until every game supports it, it just doesn't seem like a compelling reason to spend as much as it costs to get into the RTX field. So I would say, the 1080, you said 1080 Ti?
Yep.
Keep it for another couple of years, man. I just don't personally see any real benefit from having it. I went from two 1080 Ti's. I had SLI set up, and even that these days, SLI seems to be kind of a joke. No games really support it. You start to have weird issues with shaders. Star Citizen, and again, Star Citizen is still in development, so there's a lot of work to be done there still. But you'd go in, you'd launch the game with SLI enabled, and you'd see planets just strobing where the shaders weren't adjusting appropriately, and it was, and that was kind of a bummer. You spend all this money on this hardware because everyone says, oh yeah, do SLI and you'll get 40% more frames. And that may be true, but you also have to endure watching a strobing shader in every game. And not every game, but a lot of games these days, it's just not a focus of developers anymore, just to code for SLI.
And for the earlier point, just to sit down and play, it wasn't there. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not there anymore. So,
right.
I would agree. I think that's kind of where I was on the RTX. I've gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And ultimately I just paused because I haven't seen just extraordinary benefit out of that. I know that the technology's new. I think that's one. I'll be great just sitting by, ride this card out. This card's been so good to me. So I'm no complaints out of it. I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon until I see something that's just amazing I can't live without before I move over. So in that, we talked a little bit about some of the greatest things that have come out for the last year, some of the greatest things to look forward to. And I am 100% in agreement with all of these opinions around the Stream Deck being amazing. Go check it out. If you haven't, get to know it. I don't care what you do. If you're on a computer, you'll benefit from it. 100%, the processor game is stepping up daily. So it's a really exciting time as they're starting to find new needs, and not just those for gaming, but it really helps out with the artificial intelligence. We need faster chips. We're asking for more, and necessity is a mother of invention, as we all know, and it is happening. So really a lot of good things going on out there, a lot of good things to look forward to. And Star Citizen, always a topic of conversation around this crew, because it is such an amazing concept. It will and continues to have breathtaking features, functions, views. All these things are really amazing. I think it is hopefully the next generation of gaming where we start to get into more open world. I know some people advertise that. Star Citizen kind of redefines what open world really means. So really cool. I hope you all enjoyed the cast today. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thank you so much, Xeronine, for jumping in.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And as always, Kid and Drag.
We'll see you later. Until next time.
And that's our episode today, folks. Signing out for now. This is Drag.
And this is Kid. We'll catch you next time.